You ever notice how families love their little boxes? Their neat little stories about who you are, what you should be, where you belong. They build this version of you in their heads. Safe, predictable, controllable. And as long as you stay inside that version, everything's fine. Smiles at dinner, polite questions, nods of approval. But the moment you step outside the script, the moment you say, I'm going somewhere else, I'm doing something different, I'm not playing this role anymore, oh, now that's when the show really starts. Change threatens the comfort of those who never dared. Oh, that's the part nobody likes to admit. Not them, not you, not even the ones clapping politely while secretly hoping you fall on your face. You'd think your growth would inspire people, right? That stepping into something new would be met with cheers, with pride, with support. But no. What you get instead is tension, silence, side eyes, that slow, heavy disappointment you can feel without anyone saying a damn word. Because your change, it's a mirror, a loud, shattering mirror that shows them everything they didn't do. See, when you decide to leave the little bubble they built around you, maybe it's a job, a town, a lifestyle, hell, even just a label they gave you, it does something to them. It pokes the bear. It rips the curtain down on the little theater they've been performing in. Because deep down they know they could have chosen differently too. They know they stayed, they settled. They swallowed the lie that comfort equals happiness. And here you come, lighting a match with that transfer, that shift, that big, terrifying leap they never had the guts to take. So now you're a problem, a disruption, a threat to the ecosystem of denial they've spent years maintaining. They'll say you're being reckless, immature, disrespectful, but really, what they're trying to say is, how dare you remind me of the chances I didn't take? Because the moment you move, really move, you shake the foundation of their excuses. And excuses are sacred in their world. Excuses keep them warm. They wrap them around their choices like a blanket and call it being responsible. But you're not following the script. You've got the nerve to question it, to look around and say, what if there's more than this? And that question, that's radioactive. That's toxic to anyone who's been lying to themselves. So they'll project, they'll minimize your courage, they'll downplay your ambition, they'll act confused, like they don't understand why you'd want something different. But oh, they understand. They understand perfectly. They just don't want to face what it means for them. Because if you're right, if your leap leads to something better, then their comfort wasn't safety, it was a cage. And nobody likes realizing they've been sitting in a cage with the door wide open. So instead of leaving, they guard the door. They become the prison warden, telling you it's dangerous out there, that it's not worth it, that you'll regret it. But they're not protecting you. They're protecting their version of reality. And you're a glitch in the matrix. You'll notice it in the way they talk to you. The forced calm. The polite concern that feels like a warning. The questions loaded with guilt. Are you sure this is the right move? What if it doesn't work out? They'll say it like they care, like they're looking out for you. But what they're really saying is, don't leave me behind, because they see it now, that you're doing what they didn't. And the only way to not feel small in comparison is to shrink you back down. That's the secret. Your change doesn't need to be dramatic to make people uncomfortable. It just needs to be real, honest, unapologetic. The second you stop explaining yourself, the second you start making moves without asking for permission, you become dangerous, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you've stopped pretending. And in a world addicted to pretending, authenticity is rebellion. It's chaos. It's contagious. But they'll never admit that you scare them. No, they'll smile, they'll nod, they'll wrap their disapproval in fake wisdom, tell you about the real world, about how not everything is possible, about how life's about sacrifice. But what they really mean is don't make me look in the mirror. Because if you keep going, if you prove them wrong just by existing, then they'll have to face everything they buried. Every dream, every risk they never took, every version of themselves that they abandoned in exchange for approval and routine. Your growth will feel like rebellion to small minds. Oh, and not the fun kind. The loud, messy, uncomfortable kind. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're doing something different. And in a world that thrives on control, different is dangerous. You take one step out of line, one move that doesn't make sense to their checklist, and suddenly you're the villain in their bedtime story. Because your growth, it doesn't just shake your world, it shakes theirs. You see, they built this idea of you, brick by brick, label by label. You were the quiet one, the obedient one, the stable one, the he'll never leave town one, the she'll settle down soon one, a nice little character in their nice little script. And now here you come, burning the script in front of their faces, changing, evolving, wanting more. Not just money, not just status, more truth, more you. And that feels like betrayal. To people who never changed, your evolution feels like a personal attack. Because it's not just about you moving forward, it's about them staying still. And nobody wants to admit that, so they throw shade. They twist your motives. She's changed, they'll say, like it's a curse. He's not who he used to be, as if that's a problem. But what they really mean is, I don't recognize you anymore, and that scares me. Because the new you, the growing you, it doesn't fit their comfort zone. They'll say you're selfish, cold, arrogant, not because you're acting superior, but because you stopped needing their validation. You stopped shrinking yourself to fit into the little box they built for you. And that's unforgivable in their world. Because people with small minds don't understand boundaries. They think access is permanent. They think your growth should come with a permission slip. But the moment you stop asking, the moment you move without explaining, without apologizing, they panic. And what does panic look like? It looks like fake concern, backhanded compliments. Just checking in, you seem different. Are you okay? You've been acting weird. Weird? You mean I've been acting like myself, like someone who finally stopped pretending? Yeah. That'll look weird to people who only know the version of you that was edited to keep the peace. They won't say it out loud, but they miss the you that played along. The version that laughed at the wrong jokes, nodded during the wrong conversations, bit their tongue instead of telling the truth. That version was easy to love, easy to manage. But this new you, the one setting boundaries, making moves, saying no, disappearing when energy's off, that one's a problem. That one doesn't play by the rules. That one makes people uncomfortable. And the irony, you're not even trying to rebel. You're just trying to breathe, to grow, to evolve into something that actually feels like you. But to them, any move outside the lines is defiance. Because growth isn't passive, it exposes. It shines a light on the people who stopped trying, the ones who gave up, the ones who decided long ago that life was just something you survive. So when they see you trying to live, really live, it pisses them off. You'll notice it most in the silence. The way the room shifts when you speak your truth, the sudden distance from people who once claimed to love you, the awkward tension in conversations that used to flow. It's not in your head, it's real. Because small minds don't know how to sit with someone who no longer hides. They crave predictability, familiarity. And when you outgrow that, when you dare to change the rhythm, they label it rebellion. But here's the thing. They don't get to define your growth. They don't get to decide what makes sense for your journey. Let them talk. Let them twist the narrative. Let them call you difficult, dramatic, disloyal. You don't need their blessing to become who you were always meant to be. You're not here to live inside their limitations. You're not here to keep their fears comfortable. And if your evolution feels like rebellion to them, maybe that's a sign you're finally doing something right. Leaving the script exposes everyone's fear of freedom. That's the funny part, isn't it? Everyone says they want freedom. They wear it on t-shirts, write it in captions, tattoo it on their skin. Freedom, baby, the big prize. But when someone actually starts living it, when someone tosses the script, walks off the stage and stops playing the character they've been assigned, that's when the panic sets in. Not just in the ones watching, but in the ones still pretending they don't know they're acting. You grow up learning the rules, silent rules. Don't talk too loud. Don't take up too much space. Get the job. Keep the job. Be realistic. Be grateful. And for a while, maybe you play along. Maybe you wear the mask so well that even you forget it's a mask. You nod, smile, do what's expected, get the applause. But inside, something's off. Something itches. Something screams. Because the script doesn't fit, and it never did. But here's the trick. They never gave you a script to empower you. No, they gave you a script to control you. A pre-approved story where you play your role, hit your marks, and don't ask too many questions. So when you start asking them real questions, the whole show starts glitching. People around you get nervous, uncomfortable, defensive, because if you can step off the stage and survive, then maybe they could have too. And that thought burns. You were supposed to follow the path, go to school, get the job, get married, settle down, never rock the boat. And even if the job kills your spirit, even if the marriage feels like a cage, even if the town makes your skin crawl, they expect you to stay. Because staying proves the story works. But when you leave, when you say no, when you pivot into something unknown, you don't just threaten their story, you dismantle it. Piece by piece, frame by frame. They call it a phase, a mistake, a midlife crisis. They try to shrink it, mock it, contain it. You're just confused. You're throwing away a good thing. People would kill for your life. But that's not advice. That's fear. That's the sound of someone watching you do the one thing they never had the guts to do. Walk away. Not from people, not from jobs, but from the lie that playing safe equals being fulfilled. And the worst part, most of them aren't even conscious of it. They don't know they're afraid of freedom. They think they're protecting you, that they're guiding you back to the light, but really, they're scared of the dark you're stepping into, the unknown, the wilderness, the place where the script doesn't exist and everything has to be created from scratch. That's terrifying, Because out there, you can't fake it. You either grow or you get exposed. And exposure, that's the word. When you leave the script, you expose everything. The shallow conversations, the fake traditions, the forced smiles. You start seeing through things. Holidays that mean nothing, milestones that feel hollow, people repeating the same year over and over again and calling it a life. You see it all. And worse, you can't unsee it. So you leave. Or maybe you stay, but you stop playing along. Either way, you've become a threat. They'll start pulling away, one by one, not because they hate you, but because you remind them of what they buried. Dreams, desires, versions of themselves they locked away so they could earn the praise that comes with staying inside the lines. And you come along and tear right through the lines. You say no when you're expected to say yes. You take risks. You look lost and alive at the same time. And that look in your eyes, it haunts them. Because freedom has a cost, and most aren't willing to pay it. It costs comfort, it costs approval, it costs certainty, but it gives you yourself. And once you taste that real, raw, unfiltered you, the script becomes unbearable. The applause stops meaning anything. You don't need the stage anymore. You become your own story. And that kind of power, that kind of untamed, unscripted existence, it terrifies anyone still pretending that the lines they're reciting are theirs. Discomfort is divine instruction. Yeah, but nobody wants to hear that, right? Discomfort's supposed to be avoided, numbed, medicated, drowned in distractions and small talk and scrolling through fake lives at 2 a.m. But what if that ache in your chest, that tightness in your gut, that constant whisper in the back of your head, that thing that keeps you up at night, what if that's not something to run from? What if that's not your enemy at all? What if it's your guide? People treat discomfort like a disease. Like if something hurts, it's wrong. If it's painful, it must be fixed quickly, quietly, preferably without making anyone uncomfortable along the way. But discomfort doesn't show up to ruin you. It shows up to wake you up. It's the alarm clock life sets off when you've been sleepwalking too long. The itch that says something's not right. The pressure that builds when you're pretending you're fine in a life that's choking you. But we're taught to ignore it, to smile through it. Be strong, be grateful, don't complain. So you sit at that job that drains you. You stay in that relationship that dulls your soul. You go to sleep every night with a mask on, then wonder why you wake up tired. It's not the world that's exhausting you. It's the lie. And discomfort, that's the crack in the mask. The little glitch in the matrix that says, hey, something's off here. This isn't you. But people don't listen. They sedate it, overeat, overthink, overwork, anything but feel it. Because feeling means facing, and facing means changing, and change. Change is the scariest thing of all. Because once you admit you're uncomfortable, really admit it, now the clock's ticking. Now you can't unknow it. Now you have to do something about it. Or you have to consciously choose the lie every single day. And choosing the lie, that's hell. A slow, quiet hell dressed up as stability. You ever wonder why some people snap? Why they just leave? One day they pack a bag, cut their hair, quit the job, end the marriage, delete everything, and vanish. It's not impulsive. It's not crazy. It's a delayed reaction. It's the result of ignoring divine instruction for so long that the universe has to scream to get their attention. And when it finally gets through, boom, the show's over, curtains down, they're out. Discomfort isn't a flaw. It's precision. It's tailored. It knows exactly where you're stuck, exactly where you're settling. It's the internal GPS yelling, "Wrong turn," while you keep pretending you're on the right path because it looks good on the outside. But deep down you know. You always know. That's why it hurts. Because your soul sees where you could be, and it's furious you keep choosing less. And the people around you, oh, they don't want you to listen to it. Because your discomfort, if followed, becomes disruption. You start making changes, and suddenly you're not so easy to manage. You're not so easy to predict. They liked you better before, when you were suffering silently, when you laughed on cue and played your part. But now you're asking questions. Now you're pulling away. Now you're moving different. That's dangerous. Because once you start listening to discomfort, you start remembering. Remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. You remember the dreams you stuffed down, the versions of yourself you abandoned for approval. And now it's too late to go back. Because even if you try, it'll never feel the same. The job will feel colder. The house will feel smaller. The conversations will sound like static. That's how you know the instruction is real. Because everything false starts to rot around you. And maybe you don't know where it's taking you yet. Maybe you're scared. That's fine. Divine instruction doesn't come with a map. It just comes with momentum. A pull, a burn, a refusal to settle. You don't need to know what's next. You just need to stop pretending this is enough. The moment you accept the discomfort, really accept it, it stops being pain and starts being power. Because now you're moving. Now you're listening. Now you're dangerous. People who cling to a version of you will never understand the version you're becoming. That's the twist. That's the punchline. See, they didn't fall in love with you. They fell in love with who you were when you made them comfortable. That version, the edited one, the agreeable one, the one who nodded when you wanted to scream, who stayed when you wanted to run, who smiled through teeth grinding. That version, oh, they loved that version. But the real you, the changing you, the growing, unpredictable, uncontainable you, that's a threat. They act like they're confused, like you just woke up one morning and decided to change. But it wasn't overnight. No, it was a slow burn. Years of pretending, suppressing, second-guessing, until one day something cracked. A tiny little fracture in the facade. And once that crack showed light, oh, it was over. You started thinking, questioning, daring. And that made you dangerous. Because now you weren't living for applause. You weren't asking for permission. You were becoming. But becoming breaks things. It shatters illusions. Especially for the people who got comfortable with your cage. They memorized your script. They built their identity around who you used to be. You were always the quiet one. You never used to say stuff like that. You were never this bold. Well, no kidding, I also used to believe I had to shrink to be safe. Used to think silence kept the peace. But peace built on suppression isn't peace. It's a prison. And guess what? I found the key. Now they look at you like you're unstable, unreliable, like they can't recognize you anymore. That's not an insult, it's confirmation. Of course they don't recognize you. You don't recognize yourself either, not entirely. You're still being born, still unfolding. And people who only loved you in your cocoon will never clap when you grow wings, because flight makes them feel left behind. So they try to pull you back. Not always loudly, sometimes in subtle, clever little ways. Guilt, nostalgia, reminders of who you used to be, little jabs, little sighs, little comments that sound sweet but sting. You're changing. Yeah, I am. That's the whole point. You can either meet me here or watch me disappear, because I'm not crawling back into the version of myself that made you feel superior or safe or unthreatened. That's dead. You see, what they really want isn't you. It's the control they had over you. When you're predictable, they feel powerful. They can anticipate your every move, manipulate your mood, craft your reality. But the second you start thinking for yourself, the second you stop performing, the game is up. And they panic, because now your story isn't theirs to narrate, it's yours. And that makes you the villain in their little play. But don't let the villain label scare you. In some stories, the villain is just the one who finally said no, the one who stopped pretending, the one who burned the script and walked off stage. And yeah, it rattles people, especially those who never had the courage to do the same. They'll act like you betrayed them. But what really happened? You stopped betraying yourself. And that shift, oh, it shakes the whole table. People say you've changed, like it's an insult, like evolving is some sort of moral failure. But change isn't the problem. Staying the same when you've outgrown your life, that's the tragedy. That's the slow death. That's the rot that creeps in behind closed doors and eats you alive while you keep smiling for the camera. So no, you're not broken. You're not lost. You're just shedding the skin they were comfortable holding on to. And that's messy. That's uncomfortable. That's freedom. You'll lose people. That's part of the deal. Some can't handle your evolution because it forces them to look at their stagnation. Some don't want to meet the new you because it means saying goodbye to the version they could manipulate. And some, well, they never really loved you. They loved the role you played in their fantasy. And when the fantasy ends, so does the performance. Curtain down. But here's the secret. They don't have to understand you. It's not a requirement for becoming. You're not obligated to remain palatable just so they can stay comfortable. Your growth doesn't need a consensus. It doesn't need a vote. It just needs your decision. Because the moment you stop shape-shifting for others is the moment you start becoming who you really are. And that version doesn't care who claps anymore. Shock is a symptom of suppressed truth. That jolt you see in their faces, that stunned silence, that wide-eyed disbelief, that awkward pause in the room, it's not because your decision was crazy. No. It's because the truth finally slipped out, loud and ugly and impossible to unhear. And when people build their lives on carefully constructed lies, truth feels like violence. Not because it hurts them, but because it exposes the fact that they knew all along and said nothing. You say something real, suddenly everyone's fidgeting, shifting in their seats, asking if you're okay, as if honesty is a sign of madness, as if clarity is a breakdown. But you didn't go insane. You just got tired of playing along, of nodding, of pretending you were fine when every bone in your body wanted out. And the second you let it out, boom, the illusion burns, and they act shocked. But deep down, they're not surprised. They're just mad the performance is over. See, when you speak the truth, real truth, it forces people to face the gap between the life they've created and the one they actually want. That gap is terrifying. So instead of confronting it, they label you the problem. You're too intense, too emotional, too impulsive. No one asks why the truth had to be buried in the first place. They just point fingers at the explosion, never the silence that caused it. They say you've changed. No, you revealed. And revelation is loud, it breaks routines, it cracks smiles, it shakes houses, but you didn't bring the storm, you just stopped pretending it wasn't raining. And that's what shocks them. Because you were so good at hiding it, so polite, so agreeable, so tame. And now here you are, raw, real, electric. That's not a malfunction, that's a reboot. Think about it. How many people do you know walking around numb, living lives that don't fit, working jobs that suck the soul dry, stuck in relationships where they feel more like actors than humans, and they call that normal? But the moment you reject that script, the moment you say no more, they react like you just pulled the pin out of a grenade, not because you're wrong, but because you're right, and being right threatens everything they're trying to ignore. The truth, when finally spoken, doesn't whisper, it shouts, and it doesn't ask for permission either. It kicks the door in and sets the room on fire, not to destroy, but to cleanse. But that first impact, that raw unveiling, it's uncomfortable, it's disorienting. It makes people rethink things they've buried for decades. And that kind of confrontation, most would rather stay asleep than feel it. So they call it drama, they minimize it. They ask, why now? As if truth needs to book an appointment. It doesn't wait for the right time. It erupts when it's had enough. When your silence starts killing you faster than the fallout of honesty. That's when it comes, ruthless, sharp, alive. And it shocks, oh, it shocks. Because you were supposed to stay in line. Be nice, be silent, be manageable. But now, you're unpredictable. You're honest. You're dangerous. And here's the beautiful irony. They already knew. The people gasping, the ones pretending they're surprised, they felt it. They just hoped you'd never say it out loud, because once the truth is spoken, it demands action. You can't go back to pretending. You can't repaint the mask. It's done. The curtain's ripped. The audience knows. And that's what terrifies them. Not your truth, but the power it gives you the second you stop hiding it. Truth makes people uncomfortable because it exposes their participation in the lie. That friend who said nothing while you suffered. That family member who looked the other way. That partner who played dumb. They weren't blind, they were complicit. And when you finally speak, it's not just your mask that slips, it's everyone else's too. And nobody wants to be seen like that, vulnerable, caught, human. So when you shock them, remember, it's not shock at your truth. It's shock that you had the guts to say it first, that you didn't wait for permission, that you chose your own sanity over their comfort, that you broke the rule that says, keep quiet, keep peace. You shattered it. And now they can't unhear it. They can't unknow it. They can only pretend again, or finally face what they've spent their whole lives avoiding. Ah, you feel that. That tug, that quiet shift beneath your skin. It's not your nerves. It's not your mind playing tricks. No, it's something else, something real, something ancient. Like a whisper tucked beneath the chaos, humming just low enough to make you question everything. You've been restless, haven't you? Pacing your life like a cage, wondering why the ground doesn't feel like it used to. Why your reflection's been looking back with unfamiliar eyes. It's not confusion. It's preparation. Oh, you thought this was about ease. About stepping into a prettier version of the same old mess. No. This isn't some bedtime story where everything clicks into place with a soft little sigh and a string quartet playing in the background. This is a rearrangement, a reprogramming. something that doesn't ask for permission or offer explanations. You're not being moved for comfort. You're being moved for purpose. And purpose doesn't care how cozy your seat was. It flips the table, sets the room on fire, and says, now build something new. You see, comfort is a trap wrapped in warm fabric and polite routines. It's the lullaby they feed you to keep you in line. Wake up, work, smile, nod, repeat. All while your bones are screaming for something real. But comfort won't give you that. It'll give you numbness, and they know it. That's why they sell it like salvation. A couch, a raise, a filtered photo, a like, a laugh track. But underneath it all, there's a noise you can't shut off. Something's missing, something's moving. And it isn't satisfied with survival anymore. You didn't ask for this shift, did you? You didn't circle a date on the calendar and say, let's destroy everything safe and familiar. No. It crept in while you were busy pretending things were fine. It waited until you got tired of explaining away the hollowness. And then it whispered, not loudly, just enough to crack the illusion. Just enough to make you wonder if maybe you're meant for something more. But more doesn't mean easier. That's the catch. They don't tell you that. Purpose sounds pretty until you realize it means losing your grip on everything that never truly belonged to you. People, places, titles, labels, gone. One by one, stripped off like costumes after the play ends. And what's left? Just you. The real you. The one you've been dodging. The one they couldn't quite mold. The one who hears things others pretend don't exist. And now, the ground beneath your feet is moving. Not to hurt you, not to break you, but to align you, to stretch you, to tear you away from everything that made you forget how powerful you actually are. That's the kind of movement this is. Relocation of the soul. Divine demolition. Not gentle, but necessary. And it's not waiting for your comfort. It doesn't need your approval. It's already begun. You've felt it. The restlessness, the discontent that no vacation or paycheck can cure. The sense that something is ending, but not you. Not this time. Because this isn't a collapse. It's a rerouting. A divine detour. Not to some fairy tale version of life, but to the real thing. The raw thing. The thing with scars and fire and spine. The thing that can't be faked. And it's dragging you out of the lie, whether you like it or not. So hold on. Not to what's leaving, but to what's rising. Because comfort never birthed anything worth remembering. But purpose. Purpose tears you apart just to show you what was buried underneath the mask you called me. You ever sit in silence so loud, it feels like screaming. Not the kind that comes from sirens or alarms, but that internal roar, the one that hums behind your eyes and laughs when you try to distract yourself. That's what isolation feels like. Not peace, not rest. No, it's the raw, bitter rehearsal for something bigger. You think you're being punished, that you're alone because something's wrong with you. Cute. That's exactly what they want you to believe. That you've been abandoned, forgotten, left behind. But no, my friend, you were chosen for this quiet. Training never happens in front of a crowd. The sharpening, the breaking, the rebuilding, it happens in the dark. In the shadows where no one's clapping. No validation, no applause. Just you and your thoughts, you and your monsters, you and the mirror that won't lie to you no matter how many filters you try to throw over it. Because that mirror knows, and deep down, so do you. You weren't meant to stay hidden, but you had to be hollowed out first. And that part hurts. People don't understand that kind of silence. They fear it. They mock it. because it reveals too much. It shows them what they've been running from. But you were forced to sit in it, to listen. Every fake friend vanished. Every distraction crumbled. You were stripped to the core. And what was left? Just that relentless fire, that voice you tried to silence, the one that kept whispering, "You're not done, not even close." Funny, isn't it? They said isolation would break you, that you'd fade without their approval, their likes, their empty noise. But here you are, still breathing, still twitching, still holding on to something even you can't name yet. And that something, that's the evidence. That's the proof that isolation wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Because the ones who are sent ahead, they don't travel in packs. They're forged in silence, alone. So when the fire comes, and oh, it's coming, they won't be afraid to walk through it. You weren't benched. You were benedicted, set apart, not to rot, but to rise. Because something about you unsettled the norm. Something in you made them nervous. And instead of facing that, they called you too much, too intense, too deep. But really, you were just too real. And real doesn't fit inside their plastic boxes. So they left. Or maybe you left first, doesn't matter. The result's the same. A clearing. Silence. A sacred space they didn't know was holy. In that silence, you found pieces of yourself that had been drowned by noise. You remembered how to move without being watched, how to breathe without performing, how to speak without editing every word for palatability. You remembered how dangerous you were before they convinced you to behave. That's what isolation does. It removes the leash. It unhooks the muzzle. And suddenly the version of you they buried starts clawing its way back. This isn't weakness. It's war paint. It's sharpening the blade. It's learning to be your own echo. Because when the next move comes, and it will, you won't need a cheer squad or a spotlight. You'll be ready. You'll be quiet. You'll be dangerous. And you'll be walking with something that wasn't born in the light, but built in the absence of it. They always say timing is everything. As if life is some carefully orchestrated play, each act rehearsed, each line written in advance, each cue called by someone with a headset behind the curtain. But what if I told you there is no script, no director? Just a wild, chaotic stage and a spotlight that flickers on when you least expect it. Most people spend their lives waiting for permission to speak, to act, to move. They wait for the right time, the right people, the right feeling. But the truth, that moment doesn't exist. The only real moment is now, and it's always inconvenient. That's why it matters. See, there's this illusion, a cozy little lie that says you're not ready, that you need to fix a few more things, heal a little more, learn a little more, be more polished, like you're some product on a shelf waiting for perfect packaging before you're allowed to be seen. But you're not a product, you're a weapon. And weapons don't wait for comfort, they respond to conflict. You weren't made to be safe, you were made to be used, and not in the disposable sense, in the divine sense, like a key that only fits a lock forged in fire. You think God moves people when they feel strong, confident, steady? No, that's not how it works. He moves you when you're trembling, when your voice cracks, when your knees buckle. That's when the shift comes. Because in that moment, you stop pretending you're in control. You stop relying on your tiny plans and your little backup strategies. You surrender not in weakness, but in recognition that something bigger has taken over. That something unseen just stepped in and changed the rules. And you either move with it or get dragged. Now let's talk about the fear. That crawling, choking thing that shows up the second you feel that nudge. You know the one. It tells you it's too risky, too soon, too uncertain. That maybe if you just wait a little longer, the fear will go away. But it won't. It never does. Because the fear is not the enemy. It's the signal, the evidence that you've just hit the edge of the map. The part where things get real. The part they never taught you about. And that's exactly where you're supposed to be. You weren't created for comfort zones and polite applause. You weren't designed to tiptoe through life hoping not to disturb anyone. You were built for impact, for disruption, for fire. And fire doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't check the weather. It just burns. That's what movement looks like. Sudden, unreasonable, divine. The moment God moves you, it won't make sense. It won't feel safe. But it will be right. And somewhere deep inside, past all the fear and hesitation, you'll know. You'll feel that flicker, that inner detonation, that pull that says, go now. And when you do, don't expect a parade. Don't expect everyone to cheer. They won't. In fact, most will try to stop you, not because they care, but because your movement threatens their stagnation. Your obedience exposes their fear. That's how you know it's real. When your decision to move triggers their decision to stay. And suddenly, you're not just leaving a place, you're leaving a pattern. And patterns hate being broken. They will scream. They will beg. They will guilt you into staying small, but you can't. Not anymore. Because the shift has already happened. The fire's already lit. The path's already cracked open beneath your feet. They'll tell you to stay calm. They'll whisper it like a lullaby. Just relax. Everything will sort itself out. But they don't see what you see, do they? They don't hear the ticking behind the silence. The kind of ticking that doesn't come from a clock, but from pressure. From something building behind the scenes, pressing against the seams of your routine, daring to burst through the cracks. And you try to play along. You nod, you smile, you say all the right things. But deep down, something's scratching at your chest like it wants out. Like it's been locked away for too long, breathing stale air and pretending everything's fine. The world doesn't like people who notice too much. You start asking questions. People start calling you paranoid. You start moving differently. People say you've changed. And maybe you have. Maybe that's the whole point. Because you were never meant to stay frozen in the same cycle, repeating the same lines, chasing approval from people who don't even know who they are. You were made for something louder, something heavier, something more disruptive. And disruption doesn't come wrapped in polite conversation. It comes in chaos. It comes when you stop asking for signs and start being the sign. You know the weight you've been carrying. You've memorized it. It became your identity for a while. Wore it like armor. Heavy but familiar. Until one day you looked around and realized you weren't even walking. You were dragging. Dragging your purpose behind you like some broken toy you didn't know how to fix. You convinced yourself it was noble, that suffering in silence was strength. But let me ask you, who told you that your silence was sacred? Who convinced you that being small was spiritual, that hiding was holy? Because the truth is, some of the loudest movements are the ones no one sees coming. The ones that start quietly in a storm of thought and end with a roar. The shift doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs your yes. And when that shift comes, when it truly arrives, you won't be able to explain it. People will ask what changed, and you won't have an answer. Because it's not about logic. It's not about strategy. It's about surrender. The kind of surrender that doesn't look pretty. It looks like pacing at 3 a.m. It looks like deleting the plan. It looks like walking away from everything that once felt safe just because something inside of you started screaming that it's time. See, what they don't tell you is that elevation doesn't look like winning. It looks like breaking. It looks like losing things you thought you needed. People you thought were permanent, paths you thought were paved. It looks like isolation and confusion and silence so loud it deafens everything inside you except the truth. And that truth, it's simple. You're not who you used to be. You can't go back. And deep down, you don't even want to. They watch you like they're waiting for something. Like they expect you to fold, to flinch, to fall right back into the little box they built for you. Smile here, nod there. Speak only when spoken to. They crafted a version of you that doesn't shake the table, doesn't raise the volume, doesn't ask why too often. They like that version, predictable, passive, easy to manage. But then something snapped. Or maybe it didn't snap. Maybe it cracked. Slowly, quietly. A little more every day. Every time you swallowed the truth. Every time you laughed when you wanted to scream. Every time you shrank to make someone else comfortable. People like comfort. They crave routine. They'd rather keep their illusions intact than face the disruption of your truth. Because your growth exposes their stagnation. Your fire reveals their frost. Your questions make them squirm because deep down they've got the same questions, they just buried them deeper. So when you start changing, when you stop performing, when you strip away the mask they handed you, they get nervous. Not because you're wrong, but because you might be right. And if you're right, then what does that mean for everything they've pretended to believe? You want to know what scares them. It's not your age, it's not your past, it's not even your ambition, it's your awareness, your refusal to sleepwalk through life, your ability to see beyond the script. That's the real threat, not your years, but your clarity. And what they don't understand, they try to label. You're being dramatic. You've changed. You're too intense. No, you're just awake. And once you wake up, you can't go back to dreaming, not when the dream was a lie built to keep you quiet. They'll throw distractions at you dressed as opportunities. They'll offer applause in exchange for your authenticity. They'll trade love for loyalty, hoping you won't notice the difference. And if you push back, if you speak too loud, stand too tall, dream too big, they'll call you dangerous, but they won't say it to your face. Oh no, they're much too polished for that. They'll say it in whispers, in glances, in silence, hoping you'll hear it and dim yourself down just enough to make them feel tall again. But you've seen too much. You've felt the shift. You've tasted the truth, and now anything else tastes fake. You've watched people clap for you when you were broken because it made them feel superior, then vanish when you started putting yourself back together. You've watched them celebrate your humility when it looked like defeat, but get quiet when you started walking in purpose. Because confidence in someone else feels like arrogance when you don't have any of your own. You can't save them. You can't explain yourself into their comfort zone. You weren't born to make people feel okay with staying the same. You were born to disrupt, to challenge, to shake the ground they thought was solid. And that means sometimes you'll walk alone. Sometimes the only voice cheering for you will be your own. Sometimes growth feels like grief because you're mourning the version of you they loved before you remembered who you were. Before you decided that being underestimated was a gift, because it let you build in the dark, move in silence, plot your return without the noise. And now they feel the shift. They sense it. It rattles their small talk. It breaks through their sarcasm. You walk in rooms differently now. You speak like you mean it. You don't ask for permission, you carry presence. That's what they're scared of. Not your age, your becoming, your refusal to shrink. That's the threat. That's the storm they didn't prepare for. They always assume the one who stays quiet is the weakest in the room. Funny how the loudest ones are usually the most afraid. The ones who bark orders, demand applause, flaunt their wins like trophies, they're clinging to control, desperate for it. But you've been quiet for a reason, haven't you? Not because you lack the fire, but because you've been stacking it layer by layer. Every disappointment, every overlooked moment, every time you were pushed aside, you didn't forget. You remembered, you recorded, you stored it all like ammunition for something they won't see coming. See, reinforcement doesn't show up like a superhero in the sky. It arrives in fragments, in the stillness, in the weight of clarity that presses against your chest at 3 a.m. It arrives in people you never expected, in timing that feels wrong, but is in fact precisely right. Reinforcement doesn't ask for your permission, it just walks in, pulls up a chair and says, "Let's burn this old version of you down." They thought you needed saving, but you weren't drowning, you were diving. Deep into yourself, into the wreckage, into the parts no one else had the courage to face. And when you come back up, you're not gasping for air. You're dragging the whole ocean with you. That's what they don't get. You didn't want a lifeline. You became the storm that swallowed the shore. Reinforcement isn't always wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it's messy, raw. Sometimes it looks like a person who challenges you in all the ways you never asked for. But they see you, not the version you pretend to be, not the smile you wear to survive. They see underneath, and instead of running, they stay. They stay when it's ugly, when it's hard, when your mind spirals and your faith flickers like a dying bulb. They don't flinch. That's your clue. You're not being rescued. That was never the point. Rescue implies helplessness, implies someone stronger came to pull you from the flames. No, you're being reinforced. There's a difference. Rescue says you couldn't do it without them. Reinforcement says you were already doing it, already fighting, already crawling through the chaos. But now you've got backup. Now you've got someone to hold the line when your arms shake. Someone who knows your silence isn't defeat, it's recalibration. You thought you were alone because no one clapped when you moved. No one cheered when you broke patterns. But reinforcement doesn't always show up with applause. Sometimes it stands in silence beside you, waiting for you to remember who you are. Not the version that settled, the one they tried to bury with expectations, guilt, fear. But here you are, breathing fire again. Not because you were saved, but because someone walked in, handed you a match and said, "I've seen your ashes. Now let's build from them."